Hey guys, so it's been a pretty long ride playing with all of these puzzles, and I've got my like final answer regis for all of them. And today I thought I just want to make basically just a final presentation on most of these, from my favorite puzzle to do to the least favorite puzzle, and just talk about these things. If you've seen most of my videos on the channel, for most of these, I've already got one. So I doubt you're going to learn anything new, with the exception of maybe Milwaukee. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about what I think the overall template for the secret was, what the secret of the secret actually is, and just some thoughts on things that I think kind of hindered the secret a little bit, and things like that. But like I said, I'm just going to go in an order here, and just talk about them, and just give a little insight on how I think these things worked, and the brilliance of some of them, and some of them, But anyway, so here we go. So my favorite puzzle to do was Charleston. Oh, before we get started, this is the 12 treasures page. Um, this is done by George Ward and his friends, but I use it because I can navigate like real quick through here and point things out. But so excuse me, I'll be clearing my throat a lot because I'm trying to get over a little cold. But anyway, so the secret to the secret is you have to play. You just have to be playful, but you have to know how to be playful, and you have to know your role. You can, like, in the little fence thing in the front of the book, you can spell out like play roles in that, if you look at it hard enough, and I'm sure you can make it say just about anything you want with all those squiggly lines. But I just thought that was interesting that you can do that in that. But I figured that out, like, I'd say 2 years ago, that we were supposed to play a role, and you just have to figure out what your role is, and that's the secret to the secret. You just have to do what he asks you to do, and be that person in history, and play that out. Now, he tries to build things. He tries to build the history or parts of the story by what's around him. In some puzzles, he can do that super easy. In some puzzles, he can't do it at all, and you just have to kind of figure out what you're supposed to do. And I'm going to go through some of that. So you might hear me use the phrase, just because I don't know a better one, called like directional puzzle, that says to go here, to go here, to go here. And some of it is just imaginative, like you're just supposed to pretend that that object over there is this or that, and then just keep it going that way. But he does, in some instances, there's a little bit of both, or a little bit, or none at all. But anyway, we're going to get to all that. So, like I said, I'm going to do this like in a kind of a grading kind of way. It's the puzzles I think they were just absolutely brilliant, and puzzles that I'm kind of like, that was kind of like, I can understand why that's hard to do, but I think that's what they were trying to do. But anyway, so let's start with Charleston, because that was just my favorite, and it wasn't even my favorite image. But I learned to love it once I learned what it is and how these things work. And so once I knew how they worked, I knew how to, like, what I should be looking for when I'm reading them, right? So in this one, and you're going to hear a lot of history today, so this one's going to be long. So just buckle up. So between two arms extended where the law defended, that's a duel. That's just two guys dueling it out, and the law defends it because you can do it, right? And Byron jumbles these. Uh, he kind of, I don't know where that came from. He kind of jumbles these things, but you may have to rearrange them to just tell more of a straightforward story. But the story will be in there, right? So, uh, White House close at hand. That's Burr not being able to get to the White House. Hear the cool, clear song of water. More than likely, it could be one of two things. More than likely, it's just standing by the river, listening to the water before the duel itself. And or it could be him dying in the boat going back across the river, hearing the water bounce on the bottom of the boat. Edwin and Edwina named after him. That's Edwards. Burr took the name Edwards after he lost support. And so the story of Burr is in there. You just have to know you're supposed to be Burr in this puzzle, and you can't quite reach the White House. And the way I thought that Byron did this story, and this verse is just brilliant. And over here, John illustrates the same story using items that would be in that story, right? So you've got a death that hangs on a limb, you've got a shield, and you've got a lion, right? So if you can imagine that lion being Burr, that fairy has to move that limb up, taking that shield to shield the lion. He's just illustrating the shot in the actual story that kills Hamilton. And that's all that is. And yes, there's stuff in there that says Charleston, and a lot of these images have coordinates, right? So the coordinates are going to be what gets us to the city, and that should be locked in stone. And in my opinion, it should be locked in stone that there's stories, historical stories that we really already know or should know in the verses. We just have to figure them out. But that's that one. That's the Hamilton duel. Um, he's got the Hamilton that represents Hamilton down here is kind of shaped like Fort Sumter. That's a Charleston reference and things like that. But if you go to Dueler's Alley, you can see these little things right there and these little things right here. They're on the kind of sides of the building. And if you stop kind of in the middle of Dueler's Alley, you can hear the faint sound of water. I don't know if it's an old fountain behind that wall or what the deal is with that, but you can hear water there. So that was always my best guess as to where this one is. I didn't dig or anything because I just don't do that. And but that's this one. I mean, that's what I have. And like I said, I have a video on most of these that you're welcome to check out. But yeah, that's what I have for this one. So let's go on to the next one. So my next favorite one was Houston. So this one, Byron is able to build everything he needs to tell that story in these lines, except for through the wood, no line fears. That's the only one that doesn't pertain to the actual story. He just wanted something to rhyme with veers. But there is lions there. You just have to look up to find them. But so this one, I'll just bust it out real quick. So Fortress North, cold as glass. That is just space. It's a riddle for space. Friendship South, take your task to the number 982. That's starting with the Friendship 7. That's the 2,982 days it took to get to the moon. So your job here is to go to the moon. In the sky, the water veers is the rocket going up. Um, then he kind of like busts up the story here. So, um, small, split, three winged, and slight, what we take to be our strongest tower delight falls gently in December night. So we're way up there now, right? So now the booster has to detach, it has to split. So the booster splits, and it just kind of falls gently in the no gravity or whatever it is that makes it fall real slow. But if you've seen, everybody's seen those old videos as kids where that capsule is detaching and it just looks like it separates really, really slow. And then small scale step across is the step on the moon. And then there's a spout, a whistle sounds. Oh, sorry, I skipped the line. Perspective should not be lost. So now we've stepped on the moon. Now we got to get back. We can't lose perspective of where we are. And then there's the spout of whistle sounds. Okay. So what made this one cool to me was the exact same reason why JJP hated it, was that Byron made him paint. This is a water fountain. I know it doesn't look like one, but it is. He wanted him to paint that water fountain look in two directions. He wanted him to paint it looking this way to illustrate we're on the moon. And then he wanted to paint it the other way, making it look just like just this. And I think that was just absolutely brilliant. So once you figure out you have to go to the moon, you look over here and you realize I am on the moon. He's got the little countdown chart. I think down here, I think that's just a countdown chart. Um, Trying to think of what else. I think this up here is actually Earth. And then he uses the shadow, much like the shadowing in the old space pictures. I think they used a lot of the historic pictures to kind of give them real good ideas. Not that JJP needs any help with doing shadows, but I think he really concentrated on the shadow because of the way that the old images looked. So, like, kind of like that, where it's just a really, really strong shadow. And that's that one. That's like I said, I give this one a solid A too because Byron can build what he wants looking around him, and he uses everything from a water fountain to lions up on the top of a building to do this, and it was just a brilliant, brilliant puzzle. Let's see. Okay, so on to the next one. So New Orleans. So that's my next favorite. All right. So this was the first one that I figured out. And I used this one and the once I figured out exactly what he did here, I used this and then I went back and looked at the other puzzles. And the other puzzles I was able to figure out next, and then that kind of led to the other one, to the next one, to the next one. But so the story in this one is very small. There's only a few um, uh, lines in this one. Uh, as the sounds of friends fill the afternoon hours, gnomes admire phase delight. Right, that's the story. The rest of it is kind of explaining where you are, which is more what I refer to as directional. Um, Only three stand watch could be both, but I don't think it is, but it could be. But for sure, as the sounds of friends fills the afternoon hours, gnomes and Myers phase delight. That is definitely the story. And so to know this one, you have to just know who Bernadette Subaru is, and she was a saint from France, right? She saw the white lady, right, and she never said it was Mary. She just always called it the white lady. And John tells that story and that image very, very well, as if you're Bernadette, right? So in France, they have torch processions at this church that she was part of in Lourdes. Uh, to this day, I think they do it like twice a day. But he's telling Bernadette's story here, right? So she's incorruptible. She's preserved. The clock is set at zero, so the clock does not work. It's just a dead clock, but the time is preserved, like she is. Um, the She died, I think, at like 3:15, and just seconds before that, she saw the white lady one last time, right? And that's what this one is. So for this one, we were supposed to go to the Our Lady of Lourdes church and be Bernadette by getting on a kneeler. Unfortunately, this is what I learned, and then the painful part of the secret is that the kneeler isn't there anymore and hasn't been there for like over 35 years. There was a Mary statue, and after Katrina, that's gone. The little the area that used to be this right here is gone now because they're redoing that church, and they have done work on top of where he put this thing. So I do believe that this one is more than likely gone, or you would just need like an act of Congress to get it because they're, like I said, they're building on it now and all that stuff. So, but that's what you were supposed to do. You were just supposed to be Bernadette in this one. And so this one's my favorite because it's the first one that I officially think I figured out. And keep in mind, these are all just my theories and my thoughts and how I think these puzzles work. And but this was what I came up with first to figure out the other ones. So, but anyway, so then now we'll go to the next one. So the next one is Saint Augustine. Is my next favorite. So this one is interesting because back in the day, I took one look at that and I knew who that was. But I was like, it didn't make any sense over here reading the verse. It just didn't at that time. It wasn't until I learned how to read them and what he's telling us and how to do these things. So when I went back and said, okay, it was one of the easiest I could figure out was that the first chapter written in water is Lewis Mary. I think it was Meriwether, and he's writing in his journals in the Missouri River at the start of the Lewis and Clark expedition. They started at the Missouri River. Near men with wind rose. So wind rose translates to Sacagawea in Shoshone, I think is the name. And since you're with wind rose, that means you're Juan Baptiste. So, and you're behind bending branches, right? So she's carrying you on her back, and behind is bending branches because they're bending branches in front of them as they make their way to the Oregon Trail, walking through the forest and stuff. So behind you are bending branches because you're just behind her. So, but anyway, so the rest of it is probably directional. Let's see. Yeah, I'm guessing the rest of it's directional, but that's who you were supposed to be in this one is Sacagawea. So over to the image. So we got a guy on top of a rocky hill, right, that looks lost. He doesn't know what to do. He can't get down. I know he's dressed like a conquistador, but that has nothing to do with it. Um, this is Clark right here, and I know this is Clark because if you read on the story, Clark really liked her kid. Like he thought, they nicknamed him Pomp and all this other stuff. So he really liked that kid, and just took to him a little bit. But that's who this is. This is just Sacagawea, right? So I had a video on it being at an old roadside attraction, which would kind of look like the forest if you're walking through it or whatever. But it more than likely wasn't there. And for whatever reason, that video of mine has like the most hits on it, but it really shouldn't because all it has is like one match on it. But it still could be there. I'm not saying it's not because you just never know, as subjective as these things are. Wherever you're going to have to play this out at, you just have to play it out as Sacagawea. And that was the idea. So I think in a kind of a clever way, since he wanted us to be Juan Baptiste, he just had us go to the fountain of youth so we could become very, very young, like Juan Baptiste. And then you just have to pretend you're Lewis and Clark and Juan, and that's just what he meant for us to do in this one, which was really, really, really clever. So, but that's what I think for this one is like we're just supposed to be Juan Baptiste for Sacagawea. And also, if you go back and you like look at the Lewis and Clark story, I always thought they just got in a river and they just went. No, they hung out at like Indian camps and stuff like that, and just sat around and watched them and learned from them, and just did all this stuff with Indians. And you can like listen to like 9 hours of what they wrote in those journals and stuff about hanging out with Indians. And at this park, they have like where you can kind of hang out with Indians, right? They got this kind of stuff all over the place. So you could easily pretend you're Lewis and Clark at the Fountain of Youth. And I think that was Byron's intent. So but anyway, so on to the next one. So my next favorite is Milwaukee. So Milwaukee. So this was next to New Orleans was my favorite image as far as John's work. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful painting, and I would love to see it in person. I was kind of hoping we were going to be able to do that on the meetup, but it just didn't happen. But anyway, so this one was the last one that I finished, and I'm going to tell you who that is. That is Isabel the First of Castile. And the reason that's Isabel the First of Castile is because over here, if you start here and you work your way down, you can put together pieces of Columbus's 1492 voyage, right? So at a distance in time, at a distance in space, that's a voyage. Um, from three who live there, more than likely that is Spain. Step on nature, cast in copper. Okay, so they asked someone on the 12 treasure site, someone asked that direct question to Byron, and he said, "Imagine a leaf." And they're like, what in the hell does that mean? I don't know. Well, you have to imagine you're like a leaf, like Leif Erikson. That was the riddle that he was telling there. When Columbus got to, what was the name of that island? Hispaniola. He noticed that the Indians had a lot of copper, and there was just copper all over the place. And when he stepped on nature, everything was kind of cast in copper. So he's just telling you, now you've landed in his Hispaniola. Ascend the 92 steps. That's probably the 1492 steps. That is there exactly 92 steps? It doesn't have to be. He's just telling the story, as in you go through the 1492 steps. After climbing the Grand 200, that one's probably directional. I haven't seen how that could be part of Columbus's story yet. Past the compass and reach, that could just be him on the boat passing somebody the compass as part of the story. To the first young birch, again, that one's interesting because in Columbus's writings, he talks about seeing a birch on, I think it's the island of Hispaniola, past three staying west. Now, this is key if you're in this, if you're looking for this one. So, since we have to be Columbus, you might want to be careful with that one because he's still looking for the passage to the Indies, right? He just ran across this big landmass, and on his third or fourth voyage, he's trying to figure out how to get around it. So he's staying west, but he's actually working his way south. So you just have to know that being part of Columbus's story. I know that he wrote letters back and forth to Queen Isabel, and the rest of that is probably, I'm sure, of Wonderstone's hearth means something. I just haven't figured that one out yet. And then on a proud tall fifth could, I'm not sure, but and then I think that's directional stuff. And then the three stories of Mitchell and the beating of the world should be directional too. That's my guess. Like I said, they don't all have to be because I just kind of finished this one, and the joy I got out of this was figuring out the tale simply told, and I think that that's the main thing is to figure out the tale simply told, and then act that person out. But physically going there and seeing the spots. I've been to Cleveland. I've been to Charleston. I've been to St. Augustine. I've been to New Orleans. I've been to Houston. So I've gone to enough places to enjoy that. And I've kind of like, I just don't know if I want to drive all the way to Milwaukee or Montreal anymore. But that's how this one. So where would it be, right? So there is a Columbus Park there, but that's not really Byron's MO, if you will. I personally I like Lake Park in the sense that you have to navigate, and if you're in a lighthouse, you have to like navigate ships in a way too. You help them navigate around by seeing how they can go. You get up there, you can see open water, and like that. So you just have to try to find the passage to the west if you're playing out Columbus in this, and that may be why he's saying walk southeast over rock and soil because you're actually going southeast trying to stay west because you're actually looking for the Northwest Passage. So when he's saying past three staying west, that's I think that's like Honduras, Nicaragua, and what would be Costa Rica, and then he ends in Panama, and he was so close. And they told him that hey, it's just right over there, but I think by that time he had just given up and just never found it. So, but anyway, but that's what you're supposed to do. This is just Columbus, and I think over here this is Isabel with the bell in her hand, and he kind of like made the Milwaukee thing kind of look like a castle, like Isabel the First of Castile. I think she was Queen of Leon and I want to say Aragon too. It's like she juggled a lot of kingdoms there, so she just had a lot going on. So, but anyway, that's who I think that is, and that's the story. And you just have to like do a very Columbus thing, and that's how you would find it. So, all right, so really close to Milwaukee, and the way Byron did that one is Montreal. So this one was like I said, once you get used to reading the verses and trying to find the story, and you have a basic understanding of fifth, sixth grade history, you can get some of these pretty quick. And this one was like that too. So once you move these lines around a little bit, you get let's see, a wingless bird ascended, born of ancient dreams of flight. You'll see an arc of lights, right? So that's one. And together save the sight. That's two. Weight and roots extended. So together save the sight is just the invention of bifocals. That's just he's just saying bifocals. Is that something you actually see when you're playing out Franklin? I don't know. You'll see an arc of lights, and the other two lines down there are is the kite experiment and electricity. So for this puzzle, you're gonna see a bolt of lightning. I don't know where it is. There's Hydro Quebec logos all over that city. There's one in particular I like. You could go do Franklin at Windsor Station, things like that. You could, that's the problem with Montreal was Benjamin Franklin did so much. You could act him out just about anywhere. And that's what made this puzzle so aggravating for me that I never got a final destination on where he put it because of actually who it is, right? And since Byron did fun things like send us to the Fountain of Youth or put us on a kneeler or whatever, these other things, I wouldn't put it against him to like send us to a bowling alley or something to make us get a strike. So we just like a lightning strike or something like that. And maybe that's why he says lane. I don't know. But but you will have to be Franklin, or that was the idea. Over here, the way John illustrates it is just I think his hands just represent manipulation, and like he's like an artist of manipulation is the simplest way to put it. You kind of get a Philadelphia kick from this if you square this off and use this collar here, you can kind of see the Liberty Bell. And if you turn that upside down, that's the Liberty Bell. Franklin loved to play chess. He was a big chess player. The musical note, and you got the thinning of hair up here and things like that. That tells me this is Franklin. This one that part's easy to figure out. Now where I'm supposed to play Franklin in this one, I don't know. But as far as like it ranking on the scale of a great puzzle, it still is. You just have to put it together. The way that they combined the story and hid that in there was just really brilliant, I thought. And hats off to him for that. I know that like a lot of people focus on the golden square mile and stuff like that, and all the hidden stuff, and that stuff does exist. It really does, but it's not the main thing we should be taking from these puzzles. It's like the overall largeness of the whole picture is what we should be absorbing, and then looking at the at the verse trying to figure out these stories and moments in history that were supposed to play out. But this one is Franklin, and that was next to Milwaukee. That was one of my favorites. Okay, on to the next one. So, and then this next one is going to it'll make some people's head explode with what I'm going to say, but I don't care. It's what I believe, and I think it's what happened, because to me, it's once you figure them out, they get obvious. So this one is the Lincoln assassination, and Byron puts us right behind Lincoln. And that was never brought up, as far as I know, in any of the other meetings or solve answers or anything like that. But when you research that story, a lot of that is in there. So where M and B are set in stone, into Congress R is known, that's all directional stuff. That stuff is like, it's over here in this direction. You can see this over here, right? What L sits and left beyond his shoulder is the fair folks treasure holder. That is Lincoln sitting in a chair, and nobody doubts that. But the beyond his shoulder should have been the clue that someone is standing beyond him, at his left shoulder, about to shoot him. So, anyway, the end of 10 by 13 is your clue. So, again, he's using those trees as a way to tell you a clue in the story. You just have to know the story. So, the end of 10 by 13 is 1014. That's when he entered the theater to assassinate Lincoln. Seek the sounds of rumble, brush, and music. That's him leaning up against the rumbling walls, hearing the music of the play or whatever about to shoot Lincoln. And you have to be quiet. That's why he says hush. And so this was a very well put together. Now, looking over here, you don't really see all that at first. You have to kind of like read into it a little bit. So, as far as all of our 12 treasures uh, characters, if you will, this is the only one wearing something absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, that's insane. But that's what actors wear. They wear costumes. That's a costume, right? Booth was an actor. He died at Port Royal. So you kind of got this castle looking thing, and then you have port, you know, like there's port lines coming off of it here and here. And I think he's just telling Booth stories. And you can clearly not see arms on this guy, like he could not use his arms. And I think that's a very, very well artistic way of describing Booth. I would have not gotten that at first. There's no way I would have gotten that. But once you read the story and then you understand it, then you look at it, then you can kind of go, oh, okay, that's neat. That's kind of under how you did that. I see what you did there. And I just that's what I think on that one. So the reason I think Byron told these kids that it was completely solved is because he did not want to give away the store on how you solved the rest of them, and you needed to know who you were to solve the rest of them. And another thing I remember was Byron's reaction when those kids say, like, they didn't know where it was, even though they kind of knew where it was. He just is surprised. He's like, "How do you not?" Like they had to actually be Booth, I think, to fully get that. And him drawing that map was the worst thing he could have done. I think he wanted to boost a little interest in it, but he shouldn't have done that. He should have made them think even longer and harder on where they were and what they needed to do to fully get it. And I think it would have made a little bit more sense to them. And I'm not knocking them in any way. Please don't take that the wrong way. They got there how they got there, and they worked with Byron, and they got, by their own admission, they on the last strike of the shovel, they were able to get it, and that's fine. I just wish they would have solved it and its completeness, if you will, the entire puzzle. And I just don't think they ever did. And I don't think the guys in Cleveland did, and the guy in Boston certainly didn't. And I think that's a big hindrance to the secret is just not knowing the tale simply told. And I think that's what he's doing in these. So let's see. So on to the next one. So the next, like just one notch down from that one was the Boston puzzle. So, and this one, I don't like blame Byron for like doing what he did because I think he was trying to make us revere, and a lot of people got the revere references right, and they're so concentrated on spelling out Boston in there and the Boston pops and all this other stuff. But what they never really, or at least I never really heard them talk about, was the all the ornamental silver that she has on, right? And then she's got an apron on, and she's just got all this decorative, beautiful silver on, and then the whole image has kind of a a silverish, bluish tint to it, and I think that's John's artistic way of representing Revere. And over here, you're back to the stairs. Feel at home. All the letters are here to see. That's Revere when he got back home. He had to get his letters. Let's see, to deliver, and then this is all kind of Revere stuff here too. And I often thought like this part up here, if it's just a thought I had. So this probably means nothing. So don't take this one with a grain of salt. But this one, I always didn't understand. It's like, okay, if I'm way over here and I'm looking at this, and the treasure's actually way over there, I've truly distracted you from doing where you need to be. Like I kind of like totally threw you off. Well, when Revere was delivering his letters, they were kind of like that too, right? They knew what they meant, but what was written on the messages, nobody else understood. So I think that's kind of a clever way of just putting um, just gibberish in here that we don't really understand. And there's a reason we don't understand it, is because it's to throw us off completely, like we're the English. And I know that sounds crazy, but I swear I think that's what he did. And he put this on a baseball field because uh, and a lot of this one is directional because you have to kind of see in the direction to do what you need to do. But the ship, he wants you to see the ship so you can pretend you're going under it, like Revere did. And you needed to go to the bases to, deliver your message to this guy so that guy can go to the next guy, just like, and then try to make it all the way back home. And that was and that one was I can see how that one's a little tougher to do. But I think that was definitely the idea behind this puzzle, was that we were supposed to act out the role of Revere and just deliver our message. And if Theodes is north of, I can't even say that word. I'm not even going to try. But I think that's just gibberish in our message that we deliver. And I think it takes us to, like I said, it's just kind of tricking us, like just in a playful way. I think that's all it is. But anyway, and that's why that one was just so different than the other ones. So so that's Boston. So let's go to the next one here. So this one is, where's Roanoke? So this one I always thought was one of the more pretty paintings, like the way John puts the color gold in there and things of that nature. And I remember watching a lot of the gift giver clues on this, and then once it hit me, like you had the like whirling dervish, right? In its simplest form, what is the whirling dervish? It's just spinning men, right? So, and then the next clue he got was one hand gives, one hand receives. Well, that's playing foosball. And foosball are nothing more than spinning men. So he's telling us we have to go to a foosball place. And I think that's where we end up in this one, is like the foosball palace, or very close to it. That's my final answer for where we're supposed to be. I think he gives us clues on the pier with the string running through the little eye hooks and the little nibble in the spoon, like we nibble on peas. If you're a kid, you just nibbled on your peas, so you're looking for a nibble, things like that. But the story we're supposed to play out is the Wright brothers, right? And a lot of that look north at the wing is that famous picture where he's looking up. Um, there's no, yeah, it's hard. This one was like tough to figure out, but and it's been a while, but they're in there, right? Past two friends of Octave's in December. Like that was, I think, one of the flight. I think it's the first. I think this is the 59-second controlled flight is what this one is. So the reason he has us do his the foosball palace was a very kind of clever thing to do. Again, he's having us be playful and pretending we're Wilbur and Orville, right? So it's not like a modern day plane. You don't sit in a seat and you don't like um, kind of pull a lever back and push a button, right? These things had levers and rods and strings and just all kind of stuff that you had to do. And I think he's kind of having us play out flying a glider by using a foosball table. And there was also a skating rink to it, which I thought a skating reference is actually better because you kind of learn how to fly the same way you learn how to skate. But I think it was the foosball table since so much of this represents foosball. The guy in the picture, I mean, if you take the arms off, looks like a foosball man. But that's what this one is, and he is just having us fly a glider using a foosball table, and and it was this that was kind of neat how he did that. But so yeah, that's what I think on this one. The two maps with circle and square is probably directional stuff. Uh, yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen this one, but yeah, look north at the wing is definitely that famous photo that you see, and there may be a wing there, so that one's probably both or whatever. But that's what we were supposed to do is just be Wilbur and Orville. So on to the next one. So New York. So this one, if I had to say, as far as like what the story is, I'm like 90% sure I know what it is, but it could possibly be something else. But I'm going to go with what I think it is. Like I said, is my final answer, Regis, because um, I'm just never going to go to New York. But I think this one is the landing at Normandy. I think you've got the shot at most of John's paintings. He uses light. This one's like a very daytime, like smoky, foggy looking. You got a big D there, like D Day, and then you have her coming out of the water dripping, right? And then you have a turning tide. Well, the Americans are what turned the tide in World War II. Um, See simple roots and rhapsodic man soul or gaze north toward the Isle of B. I think you've already taken the beach as part of the story, and now you're looking back toward the British Isles to see the damage. I think in this one, my personal spot for it would be, if I had to guess, it would be Astoria Park underneath that giant bridge. Um, I think this is a diving board, and that the arm over the slender path. I think the slender path is the diving board, and it's your arm over the side of it. Um, and he's just like you'll often hear a whirring sound is you underwater, like you're invading the beach. In summer, like at a pool, telling you again. The sign nearby speaks of Indy's native. I think that's the natives still speak. Yeah, I think that's a reference to Omaha, like Omaha Beach. Um, And that's just that's how I looked. I read this one, and um, yeah, and if you kind of like look at it in the story of like Normandy in the shadow of the Gray Giant, I don't know if if that's a story part or just directional being the bridge, but you can kind of see that being like a landing ship, right? You're having to get off a big Gray Giant to go invade the beach, and that's just how kind of Byron does things. But it's hard to tell if that's what he meant or not, right? Because it's so subjective. But my answer to this one is the invasion of Normandy. So that's what I got for this one. And then like if you're on a high dive, you're gonna drip. I mean, you're gonna be up there and you're gonna drip too. And then you can see directly below the pool. There's like this little ring of rocks, and then there's like a monument. And I think you just have to get on top of one of those rocks, and it's like next to it. But that's my answer for that one. I wouldn't suggest digging there, but I don't know if you need permits or not. But yeah, I wouldn't do it. But that's that for New York. So now we're getting into the ones that I just did not like. So um, let's see. Why can't I go back? All right. So San Francisco. I think Byron thought this one was easy because he knew what John painted, but nobody else did. And that was the problem with it, right? Um, so John in his image has a harbor that is like full of rocks, it seems. There's a lady of Asian descent and it's pointing up. You see like a repeating pattern in the back of like the rising suns, I guess maybe. And then you see a very big rocky structure lying down like that. So if that person wants to stand up, he would be very big as well. And I think that all Byron gives us over here is giant pole, giant step because he had no clue how to build that with what was around him. And I don't think anybody would. But he wanted, as part of American history, he definitely wanted that in his book, right? So this one's Pearl Harbor, and so you got the arrow pointing up, Asian descent, like the Japanese in the sky or whatever. You could argue sounds from the sky could be the planes coming from the sky, but I don't know, and I don't know like how they actually the attack pattern of Pearl Harbor, but it might be worth looking into if it's running north but first across or something like the first wave came this way and but I don't know. I haven't looked into that enough to know because I just never liked this puzzle enough to like once I knew what it was, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I listened to the Fairmont solve or whatever. And like I said, all of that solve was directional except for maybe like the last bit of it. But I do think I liked it. I liked it because once you figure out that's Pearl Harbor, and all you have to know in Pearl Harbor is the most famous quote from that Japanese uh, admiral or whatever he was I fear that all we've done is awakened a sleeping giant. So in this puzzle, Byron is making us a sleeping giant. So if you're going to go to sleep, you got to go to a hotel. And he picked the one with the elevator that's on the outside that would make you a giant. So if you're waking up and you get in the elevator and you pretend you're going up, you're going to just stand up real quick, being a giant, and you can oversee all of San Francisco. And I think that's the object of Twain's attention is just San Francisco. But that's all that is. And I just thought that was real interesting. So, but wherever he's playing this out, we just have to be a sleeping giant if it's not at the Fairmont. But I'm kind of with them and thinking it is there. But we were supposed the idea of why we were there was to be that sleeping giant. And that's the part that got me. Like, that would be the most random thing ever to bury that thing there and be like, okay, it's there. And that's the part that I just always amazed me about people with just the randomness of it. It's like, no, there's a reason Byron's picking these spots. You just have to figure out why he's picking these spots. And he's just having us play out fun American history. Let's see. So the last one. So the last one that this puzzle I just did not like. The painting I liked after I saw it because I went to the meetup and it's way prettier than this in person. But this puzzle was just all directional. I mean, there was no imagination in it at all except for what John may have put in the image, which I don't think is very much. So it wasn't until I got back from the meetup that I saw the Nixon right here. You can see him; he's looking down this way, and then I got to ask myself, okay, so why is Nixon there? And then I got to thinking about everything John said, and there. So then I determined, okay, this one's Watergate. So, and I don't know if you can really see behind here, but there's this little wall looking thing that kind of looks like a gate. Maybe there's water in front of it, and there's columns like the White House would have. And I don't know if Byron said this will do because it would have represented enough to something like you could pretend that you're at Watergate. But whatever the reason, it was just a bad spot. Like they like to say a fifth grader in Alaska could figure a lot of these out, right? That's very true for New Orleans. That's very true for Houston. That's very true for Charleston. St. Augustine. I could argue just about all of them, but you can't say that for this one. And that's why I don't like this one. This is the only puzzle that I just absolutely did not like. Because even when I figured out that in my mind that how I'm not Cleveland, Chicago and Boston worked, I still couldn't figure this one out. And I'm like, how hard can it be? Like, this has to make some kind of sense, but it doesn't. But once I heard John tell his story, I think he's kind of helping us in that. And I'll let y'all go back and listen to that and listen to his words very closely, but learn the story of Watergate first before you do it. And I think he's kind of giving away a little bit there, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, I think the only thing we really get is him looking down this thing looking like the Watergate building, and then this guy being left out in the cold, exposed. And that's it for this one. So that concludes just about everything I know about The Secret. Like I said, I think this will officially be my last post for my little YouTube page there, and then it'll be back to cooking. But I just wanted to put something together that would help people, like, see if they could just pretend to be these people. And it doesn't so much matter where I think the locations are, but it will matter that you have to play this person out at some location. That's the key to it. And I'm not going to convince a lot of people that that's what these things are, but they are. And the another thing I think that really really hurt, and I hate to say it, I mean, it pains me to say it, but the Ickles comment was not helpful at all, because a lot of these are not mathematical or mechanical and stuff like that. They're just historical. You just have to know, if you want to argue that the Wright brothers are mechanical because you have to pull levers on a foosball table, okay, but that's nothing you're going to see in the image or the verse, right? If you want to say Houston's astrological, that's fine too. But again, that's you already have to know the story to know that. So I just didn't think the Ickles comment. I just think you should just look at them all as historical, and then you can figure out stuff from there. And then the last point I want to make is, I think what Byron tried to do on most of them, and he obviously couldn't do this for Cleveland as far as I know, but he could do it for Charleston, New Orleans, Let's see, Boston, San Francisco. I think he tried to make the um, tried to turn us into kind of like the mascot there, right? So if you're in San Francisco, you became a giant. If you were in uh, New England, Boston, you were a patriot. If you were in uh, New York, you was a ranger. If you were in New Orleans, you were a saint. If you were in Houston, you were an Astro. I think he kind of tried to do that as much as he could too. I think he obviously couldn't do that in Charleston, stuff like that. But he just did a neater thing in Charleston where he put the fair person in history, like they moved the limb that blocked Burr from dying, things like that, which I thought was kind of neat. But yeah, this whole book was a lot of fun. But for me, it's time to put it away. Yeah, I had a just an absolute blast over the last few years going to these places, getting to visit the sites and stuff like that. And I was never a big traveler, but it kind of turned me into one. If I had a wish for the secret, as crazy as it sounds, I kind of wish that every school in America had a access to this book just to teach kids. How history was in a creative way. And you could just flat out tell them, hey, this is something in history, something you should know. Now tell me what it is, right? And it would teach kids to look into like Columbus more and learn about his other voyages and not just the one where he landed in San Salvador. And yeah, that little shape right there might actually be San Salvador too, by the way. But anyway, just little things like that. But yeah, this I had a blast. I wish that you know, I hope that somebody uses this and kind of acts this out. And oh yeah, on this particular puzzle, I kind of forgot to say that the culvert, that was an interesting word that Byron chose. And the reason I think he chose that, because you have to ask yourself, what is a culvert? And it's just it's a passage. It's a way. It's a like kind of a it's a hidden passage, right? We drove over one in the country all the time because you couldn't see it, but it was just a hidden passage. So I think he's just almost saying passage there. But anyway, yeah, back to my wish on these things. Yeah, I wish they would end up in the in the hands of more kids that could use them. And but as far as like getting to dig, most of these places you can't just because of the day and age we're in, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, it's fun. You can go over these with your kids too. Like you can tell them like even if you don't know where it is, just as a thinking exercise, you can do that. My kids actually started liking history, not because of the secret, but because all these places I was dragging them to Charleston, and then I'd make them go to Fort Sumter and stuff like that. And now my kid wants to teach history. So I thought that was cool. So, I think Byron will be proud of that. But yeah, so that's all I got. And, I wish you guys all the best. I hope one of y'all dig one out of the ground one day if they're still there. If I had to say the ones I think were still there would be maybe Houston, maybe New York. The rest of them, I don't know. Depending on where in Milwaukee, things like that. But yeah, that was my big disappointment was me having my ex, but then I couldn't prove it because nothing is there anymore. And that was just so bumming. But yeah, and I wish that uh I just wish there was someone that was representative of the puzzle that could say the old rule, like, yeah, you just write your thing in the back of the book. I'm not even sure we were supposed to write like where we thought where it was in the back of the book. We were just supposed to say things like, yeah, I was Columbus and I got to here and it wasn't there anymore. But this is why, because, and you could detail it out how you got there. and things like that, or just say behind the kneeler or next to home plate or things like that, was simple enough to prove. Because if you did that, then he would know you knew how you got there because you would have known the story. And but that's it. Like I said, don't treat these things as a directional X marks the spot kind of map, because they're not. They're more just figuring out the story, knowing what you have to do, use what's around you to build that story as best you can. And hopefully some of it's still there. Some of it's not going to be, like the water fountain in Houston, the Needler in New Orleans. That stuff's just not there anymore. And I would assume it's the same for a lot of these other places too, that there needs to be stuff there that's just not going to be there. But yeah, I kind of wish, like in a way, that they would kind of like redo this with events that's happened in the last 40 years. I would have a lot of fun trying to write those out and in a cryptic way. I'm not sure I would be as good as Byron was with it, but I think they would be fun to do. But I would have to, know somebody that knew how to paint cryptic things too, and I just don't. But I hope somebody gets a hold of this one day and kind of does another one exactly the way that they did this one. But just leave it to the kids to figure out. But kind of give them a more of a, like, tell them this is history. Like that's all they would have had to do to lean into this more, instead of thinking like Byron's coming into this thinking that Byron would be the world's best Jeopardy contestant, knowing things like Preservation Hall in New Orleans and stuff like that. It's like he's not going to know that. He was a smart guy, but I mean, unless you're local to places like that, you're just not going to know those places. And I hear all kind of things like that. But he did know basic history. He expected kids to know basic history, and he put in here basic history, and then just had them play it out for fun. But anyway, I'm going to leave y'all with that. Everybody take care, and like I said, just play your role, and maybe you'll end up with one of these things. Y'all take care and have a good one. Bye.